Hi, this is Andrew Smith, instructor at Ferris State University and runner of artbysmitty.com. Today we're going to be going over how to use and create displacement maps for your models. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is hit Alt-W, go into full screen here, into perspective view. I'm going to draw a box that has a slight height to it. Right click to end. Hit F4 to turn on edges, J to get rid of my bounding box, and I'm going to hit W to move this guy, and we need to move him to the origin or center of our scene, so I'm just going to hit right click these arrows down here, and now it is a perfect 0, 0, 0. Let's scale this guy down a little bit. That looks pretty good. First thing I'm going to do is apply this first. This is going to be our carpet, so I'll name this carpet material, and I will apply it to this object, which is going to act as our carpet. Okay, now that that's there, notice I'm getting this pink-purple highlight for my edges. I usually like to work in black. After seeing it, that's how Gears of War guys use it. So and I actually prefer it to be this way. So I'm going to hit OK after changing it to black, and I'm going to come in here and change length segments to something like 20, and actually let's go something like 40, and width segments we'll try something like 60, and height segments we'll say 2. I'm actually going to increase these by 20 apiece and call it good. So now we have all kinds of polygons that make up this mesh, and the squares are pretty universally, square. They're not like extremely stretched rectangles. We're doing this because when we apply the map, we want it to affect all surfaces evenly. Okay. So right now it's a box. I'm going to right click, change it to editable poly. The reason we're doing this, subdividing it like crazy, is one of the reasons why we do depth maps. They affect the geometry, whereas in bump maps actually just affect or normal maps, they'll affect the normals. But this is actually, a displacement map will actually edit this geometry based on a texture map. So just to show that, you don't have to do this part, but I'm going to create a box that's similar in size over here. Slight extrusion, and we'll move this guy down, and apply that same carpet material to him. This guy is going to be something like 10 by 15 by 1. Alright, I'm going to change his color. I'm going to leave it green so we know the differences between these two when I have this edge mode turned off. Alright, so the first thing that we have to do is unwrap these guys so that we can apply texture to them correctly. Okay, so I'm going to select this one. I'm going to call this one carpet 001. This one will be carpet 002. And with this one, the number 1 selected, I'm going to apply Unwrap Uvw. I'll hit edit and come in here. And what I want to see next is I'm going to actually turn off the edges and click checker pattern. And notice it's stretching a little bit, so we can fix that quite easily here. I'm going to select this guy, go to free transform, and scale this down and see what our results are going to be. We're basically just trying to get these squares here in 3D space to be square and not stretched like they were before. So with that applied, I'm going to close it and hit collapse all. Hit yes, and now I'll come over here and do the same thing to this guy. Edit his UVWs, click show my checker pattern, and see that they're stretched, so I'm going to come in here, select them, and do the same thing. Okay, that looks good. We will say collapse all, yes. Alright, so next thing I want to do is get my carpet texture. Normally I would go and create my own, but to speed up this tutorial, we'll go ahead and go to cgtextures.com, and we're going to come in here and pick a carpet texture that is appropriate for a displacement map. And so this texture looks like it'll lend itself well to converting it over to a displacement map, so I'll hit download the tiled texture. And now that actually gave me this image. which looks kind of like carpet. You zoom in and it starts looking like peat gravel, but from far away it looks like carpet, so we'll go with it. I'm actually going to open this up into Photoshop, and just to kind of show you what it looks like. Let's first just try applying that material here to our object. So I'm going to hit M on the keyboard, come to here, hit diffuse. I'm going to go to maps, standard bitmap, and okay, wait for Max here to catch up with me. I know this is such a difficult command for Max to handle, but we're going to sit here and wait for it. Okay, finally came up. We'll go search to my desktop, find this carpet texture, and we're going to say go up a level, say show in viewport. I will hit F4 to turn off my edges, and we notice that the carpet's huge. Real carpet in this life isn't really like that unless it's like shagged carpet or something like that. So what I'm going to do is actually come into the bitmap channel here and say tiling. We'll change this to 10 by 10. Or actually, let's try changing this to 5 by 5. Or maybe 3 by 3, just so we can still kind of see these details appropriately. So if I hit render, we'll see that these two guys are looking pretty similar. Alright, so coming back to Photoshop, this image looks desaturated, but it's not. It's got yellows and blues and greens and stuff in there, and displacement maps are actually simply just black and white images. If you want to know exactly how the displacement map works, is you can Google it. Otherwise, just take my word for it that it is a black and white image. So we have to change this into a black and white image. The areas in black are going to be areas that are not affected at all, and areas in white are areas that are going to be kind of poking up and actually changing the geometry. The gray areas will be a blend of, pure white at 255 is going to be our maximum, and all the grays in between will be appropriately, they will appropriately affect the height. So if it's 50% gray, it'll cause the geometry to displace 50% of what it normally would if it was white or black. So what I'm going to do inside Photoshop is hit Control-Shift-U, and that'll actually change it to desaturated. And next thing I'm going to do is come in here to Image Adjustments Levels, and I'm going to make it so that these blacks are nice and black and the whites are a little bit more visible. So we only want pure white in some areas, so I'll change this middle slider here, and we'll hit OK. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-S and save this as carpet _ DISP for displace. Hit Save. OK. Come into Max here, and I'm going to go back up a level. Come back down here to where it says displacement, enable it. Where it says none, click that, and go to standard bitmap again. And now we need to go find that displacement map. Alright, now with that displacement map, we can hit render, and we can see that it's going to affect our geometry accordingly. So I'm going to hit F10, and it brings up my render setup menu, and I'll scroll down here to, I'm going to change this. Well, actually, we want to keep it at mental ray, so excuse that real quick. Let's just try and hit render one more time. You can do that by hitting Shift Q. Okay, so that was taking a long time to render in mental ray. Displacement maps will take a while to render. So I'm going to go to render setup and come down here and make sure that my default scanline's on just for this presentation. If you're doing mental ray, just be aware that it's going to take a little bit longer to render. So I'm actually going to close that now, come back here to my carpet and see it's affecting it in real time here. But I'm actually going to first turn off displacement and do a quick render. I will hit the clone button so we always have this image to look back to as reference. I'll move it off to the side. I'm going to come back here, turn displacement on, and hit render again. And this will render with the displacement map. So you can see it's displacing my geometry very, very, like a huge amount. And you can see that our object here with the lower number of polygons can only be affected so much because it's limited to the number of polygons in the mesh. So that's why we want so many polygons on this one, so we can get all the detail that's in our texture map. So what I'm going to do now is move this original one off to the side, and I'm going to come here to displacement, say the value is going to be, right now it's at 100. I will change it to 10. And we'll try rendering this out again and seeing what we get. And it's a little bit more of a desired effect. It's still quite jaggy in some areas, but you can see it looks a little bit more like carpet. So let's come in here and try changing the displacement down to something like 2.5, or let's see here, or 3, and hitting render now. Alright, so now we're left with this texture that is affecting our geometry appropriately, and I might even try bumping this down to something like a crazy value like 2 or 1, just because my displacement map is so highly contrasted. So also, let's just throw in a light here just to quick see what it looks like, a standard Omni light. And we'll move him up. We will say shadows are on. We'll say ray trace shadows. And we'll come down here and we'll also say decay type is going to be inverse square so that the light actually fades as it gets further away from our light source. So if I hit render now, you can see the light's starting to affect this carpet appropriately. And if we wanted this displacement map to look better, we could come in here, select this object, apply turbo smooth, and make it even more polygons. And now if we hit render here, we'll see it'll allow us to capture more detail in this plane over here. Okay, here's our new render, and it's looking much nicer now. And that took a little while to render, but you can see the results are much more appropriate, and this is starting to look like carpet. Let's try coming in here to bitmap and saying tiling is at 3. Let's change it to 4 by 4. And one thing we forgot to do is come in here to our displacement map and edit its tiling as well to 4 by 4. So now we're going to hit render and see what happens. And so here's our result with the displacement map lining up with our diffuse map much more closely. And you'll notice I'm going to turn the intensity of this up to something like 2, and we'll zoom in here closer on this carpet so we can kind of see the differences and see how the textures are lining up correctly. Okay, so now if I zoom in here, you can see that this carpet's geometry is actually doing some really cool stuff as opposed to this one with a considerable less amount of polygons. So this is how displacement maps work, and this is how you can get realistic looking textures like carpets to work without having to sculpt the detail. You can actually edit the geometry just by using your displacement map and using textures that line up correctly. So that's how displacement maps work. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thanks for watching.